Good morning, beautiful. I just finished my nice icy swim, and I figured we could start it on lesson number 4, which is our intuition. I'm staggering the lessons, which is starting with our mind, perceptive, going to our heart, feelings, going back to our mind, now we're coming back to our feelings. And our mind would love for us to believe that it is our intuition. However, it is not. This is another one we're going to find right here in our heart. Oh, let's take a sec to appreciate this wonderful, wonderful scene. So, we're going to locate our intuition in our heart. And I know what you're thinking, Fluid Druid, that sounds an awful lot like the heart's compass. But here's the thing, there is a crucial distinction between the two. Our heart's compass is always available to us at all times. It's how we feel, how our spirit sits with that situation. Our intuition, however, something that comes up in the moment. It is a very, very similar feeling, but it's not always at our fingertips. One sec, gotta load up my water. So remember, I believe it was 2.5, I talked about being toned in with your feelings and the sensation of danger in the forest and not being welcome. That is a great example of your intuition coming in to save your ass, which is really its evolutionary purpose. And as we combine our heart's compass and our intuition, we're going to notice an interesting sensation. So that sensation is a later lesson we're going to call the path. And I mention it now just in case you've noticed it come up. We use our heart's compass to navigate the world effectively and do the things we know we should. Now, the moments when we feel our intuition pop in and meet up with our heart's compass, this is what I call the path. And it has its whole own lesson. But if you felt it come up, really, really tap into that moment, because that's your spirit trying to tell you, hey, you're going the right way. Back to intuition. Something super interesting about intuition is there's actually scientific backing to prove that it transcends time, or the force we understand is time. There was a study done where people were hooked up to some, vital monitors, yada yada, and they were showing slides of peaceful images, tranquil landscapes, animals, yada yada. And every whatever random number of slides, they'd sneak in something horrible, like a picture of war, a skinned animal, something like this. And they observed that the person's vitals would react 5 to 10 seconds before the image came up. And once I became aware of this, and I had it affirmed by this study, I really started to pay attention to this new feeling I found. And it's actually a very primal, very old feeling. So it's more in the back of your mind, down through your nervous system, you're going to notice it. And similar to most magical things, it comes in kind of like a wave form. So there's a peak and a gradual build. And the more and more you become aware of the distinction of this feeling between many, many other feelings we're going to cover, the sooner you will pick up on that intuition. You're going to notice your intuition and your heart's compass kind of affirm each other and play off of each other quite often. So if you're following your heart's compass and an intuition comes up, it's going to direct you down a pathway pretty immediately, and you should react as soon as possible. Because pathways do get lost. If you keep walking through the woods, you're not going to remember how to get back to that little trail. And when you're following your intuition, and if you have any doubts, you can always just check in with your heart's compass. So these two feelings, you're really, really going to want to focus on finding the distinction between the two, and also picking up on the wave of your intuition sooner and sooner. So, when we're using our heart's compass and our intuition, it's very important to note that we do away with the idea of immediately bad and immediately good. I've got a great story that explains this concept well. So there's a farmer who lives with his son in a small village. His horse escapes, and they only have the one horse. And the whole village comes by and they say, "Oh, what horrible luck that is." And he says, "Well, we don't know yet. Good or bad. We'll see." And then the next day the horse brings back 2 other horses. And the whole village comes over and they say, "Wow, what amazing luck you have." And he says, "Well, that's yet to be seen, good or bad." His son, the next day, is out training one of the new horses. Falls off the horse, breaks his back, and the whole village comes by his house. And they say, "Oh, what horrible news that is." And he says, "Well, that's yet to be seen, good or bad." And then the next day, an officer from the military comes by and he says, "All able-bodied men are going to the military." And the whole village came by and say, "Oh, what terrific news that is." And the old man says, "Well, you know, that's yet to be seen, good or bad." So the idea of the story is, we don't really know what is good and what is bad until we're on the other side of the hill. And if we keep that in mind when we're following our intuition and our heart's compass, because sometimes it just seems stupid. You're like, why the fuck would I want to get in that icy water? That looks horrible. But if you listen, there are secret, wonderful powers that it will lead you to that are beyond your mind's comprehension. And remember, we're not our mind. It wants us to be, but we're not. We are spirit. We're all this vast, vibrating energy around us. And though it makes no sense, it leads us into a little magical secret. And those would be the grandfather elements, I call them. You can also call them the prime elements. And 2 of these are hot and cold. So, similar to the idea of the good, bad, yet to be seen, I've noticed cold, though uncomfortable, is the rewarding of the 2 spirits. He says, you know, if you're willing to be with me, I will make you strong. Whereas I've noticed heat, though comforting, to weaken you considerably. Just think about those 2 things for a second, how weird that is. But the more you think about it, the more truth you're going to see. So, quick review. Intuition and your heart's compass are different feelings, but they play off each other heavily. So you're really going to need to learn to distinguish between the 2. When you're following your heart's compass and your intuition, you're going to lead into something called the path, which we're covering later. But before we even get there, you're going to need to understand that your idea of good and bad and how they serve you in the moment are going to need to go. Remember this story. We can't actually say where our heart's compass and intuition are leading us is good or bad until possibly 5 years from now. And similar to the idea of good and bad, our first 2 prime elements are of a similar idea, a similar nature. Help us wrap our head around the true concept of good and bad. Heat, comfort, not sustainable with empowerment. Cold, discomfort, also not sustainable with empowerment. But somewhere between the 2, we're going to find a wonderful balance. Because if you just go into cold, all this discomfort and stress is going to break you down. And if you just go into warm, you're going to become weak. So, have a wonderful day and stay beautiful.